I've been. Dreams are seeds we plant, my friend. Dusty boots, but a heart of gold. Your story's waiting to be told. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Cowbell ring and feel the beat. Hustle hard, don't take a seat. Every step you're blazing trails. Inventive journey never fails. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Your time is now, your stars align. Your time is now, your stars align.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Brian Livingston. And Brian started his journey as a kid, always, in his own words, acting as an engineer and taking things apart and figuring things out. And then as he's grown up, had a Boy Scout leader that was an engineer and inspired him to go into that direction. Got an engineering degree, worked in corporate America doing project management for businesses such as General Foods and M&M Mars and NutraSweet and Caterpillar, among others. And then more recently, got laid off as COVID came around, as Caterpillars was forced to do some downsizing. And then a friend introduced him to a product that was made in the U.S., which led him to the present business. So with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast, Brian.
Hey, thanks. Thanks. Hey, you stole a bunch of my thunder, but that's okay. We'll fill in the details.
Condense everybody everybody's life into a 30-second version. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So with that, why don't we rewind and unpack it a little bit and just give us walk us through a little bit how things got started out as you were growing up, wanting to be an engineer.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, if you've seen that Dilbert cartoon or the animated movie that they made, in some ways I was kind of the Dilbert kid, like you mentioned, always taking things apart, driving my mother in particular crazy, always having weird things going on in my bedroom. She'd walk in and go, "What is going on?" Well, Mom, if you step on this rep over here, then it opens the closet door over there. That kind of thing. So I guess I was kind of destined for that. I always knew I liked science, scored really high on science, all those things in grade school, but I didn't really know that there was such thing as engineering. All I knew is I liked science. And then when I kind of got a little older, figured out engineering is really applied science. And I was like, "Ooh, that sounds very good." So anyway, as you mentioned, yeah, my Boy Scout leader was a chemical engineer, and that's when I decided, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Let's do that. So I went to college for a while to do that. And frankly, I went to college for more than the average guy would do because I'm probably not as smart as the average guy. So it took me a little longer, but I did learn it well. And so I got out and did mostly project engineering for my companies. Some of it got a little bit technical, but I never was a very technical engineer. Like I wasn't the chemical engineer that sat down and designed distillation columns or something. That just wasn't all that interesting to me. I always kind of liked the people side of the business. Um, Early on, I was in a consumer foods business, general foods, and I just really enjoyed the people side of trying to figure out, what is the average buyer of Kool-Aid like, and what do they want, and of course the myriad of products that came, with General Foods, which doesn't exist anymore. It's been kind of rolled into Kraft Foods many years ago, but it's still all consumer food stuff. But anyways, I progressed through my career. I still always enjoyed the people side. I kind of joke with people, and it is kind of true, but I joke with people that, physics, if you do the math right every time, you get the same answer. Well, with people, you never get the same answer twice. And this is more interesting to me. So I always kind of gravitated towards that, the project management source kind of things where you had to sell an idea. You had to help people understand what's in it for them, whether it's another department head or, you're going to bat for a department head to try to get that person money for a project in their area, lower cost or increase production capacity or whatever it is. So in short, I've always kind of enjoyed that side of the business. And when I progressed through and finally wound up at Caterpillar,
So
I
just
went
before
in
we
on,
jump too much, so just
yeah, go
walk
for
us
it, man.
through,
Yeah,
unpack
interrupt
that a little
anytime.
bit. So I mean, just rewinding a little bit, as you said, went into engineering, got a degree, came out of college, and I think at the beginning of that journey, you started at General Foods. So kind of how did you get started at General Foods, and kind of what was that progression?
Yeah. Well, I was pretty fortunate in during my college years, I spent 3 out of the 4 summers in industry doing jobs that were kind of like my degree. And that just taught me so much. When companies, at least in those days, it's been a long time since I've been in the job market, obviously, but in those days, if you had some practical experience like summer internships and stuff, it was kind of golden. And sometimes they would even hire you with assuming with 1 year experience even. And so when I got my first job, I kind of understood what the work world was all about, in the professional sense. And that first year, I did very well. And at the end of the year, my boss brought me in and said, "Well, we're actually giving you the highest raise possible because you have just outperformed everything." And it's kind of funny because when that happens, then it's like compound interest. You start your career early and make really big raises at first, then it always goes up from there. So you're starting from a bigger base every time. So actually, that 1 year was pretty pivotal, at least in my salary, over the years, because I got started from a higher base then. So that was pretty gratifying, of course, and also that company I won a couple of awards where recognition is always nice. It sometimes came with some bonus money, but it always came with some nice recognition. Um, and so, yeah, career wise, then
And what,
from there I
yeah, I was
moved
gonna say,
on.
what made you, if that sounds like you're doing well or prospering and otherwise getting recognized and
Yeah,
whatnot. So what kind of led you to switch to, going to the next direction or kind of switch or companies?
yeah, those are some things that sometimes you don't even know. You look back on it years later and you don't even know. I did run into one person who didn't like me, and they did arrange to get me terminated. And so, that was, my first job. I was there like 6 years or so and worked on a lot of different projects, worked at 2 different plants. And yeah, my career was going very well. I had one of the vice presidents, actually fly me up to headquarters and say, "Hey, you're the future of our central engineering group." So I'm like, "Wow, okay." And then as I was kind of leaving, he's like, "That means don't screw it up, you know." Well, I must have screwed it up because I did run into one guy that really didn't like me, and he did all the back room shenanigans, to get me fired. And so, okay, that was a good tough lesson, early on in my career. Um, so then I worked for M&M Mars for a few years. I don't remember how many right off the top of my head. I was in an R&D position. So it was a bit more technical, but had supervisory experience there and that kind of thing. And Mars, it's a bit of an odd company, just kind of an odd culture. And I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It was just, different. So anyway, after that first thing, then I went through, M&M Mars for a little bit, and then went to I'm going to kind of get these straight now. NutraSweet. Back to my roots of project management. I did some really fun projects there. We did about a $100 million expansion of a plant in Georgia, and I was the project engineer for that. And that was pretty gratifying. I had never worked on anything that big before. In fact, a lot of people, in their whole careers don't get $100 million project, which would, by today's dollars, probably 150 or $200 million. So that was kind of fun. But then, NutraSweet saw that I did a good job at that. So then they transferred.
And if I remember, just before you jump off that, if I remember when we chatted a little bit before the podcast, you had a claim to fame while you worked at M&M Mars. So maybe clue us in on what your claim to fame is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Back at M&M, it's kind of fun because everybody knows M&Ms, and everybody loves M&Ms. So it's a great, entry, whatever. So I used to take little packs of M&Ms with me. So occasionally, if I'd meet somebody on the airplane or something, I'd hand them a pack of, a little small fun pack of M&Ms or something. It's a great conversation starter. It's a great thing to have in your bag. But yeah, my team and I were very instrumental in developing the process for peanut butter M&Ms. So yeah, if you like peanut butter M&Ms, which most of us in the world do, yeah, my team and I did that.
All right. Well, we definitely
Yeah.
want to know who to thank, so didn't want to jump over that as a good opportunity for you to toot your
Yeah,
horn
really.
or
Yeah.
to highlight that claim to fame. So I
Yeah.
jumped in, but you worked with M&M Mars there for a period of time before you moved
Mm,
over to NutraSweet. So maybe if you wanted to pick up from there.
yeah. So, did the project in Georgia, $100 million, and then we built a grassroots plant in France, in the northern part of France, and that was about twice that size, so 200 million. So that's probably 300 or 350, 100 million in today's dollars. Pretty big project. And I was the co-project manager there, which was an interesting position because it was a joint venture with a Japanese company, an American company, building a plant in France. And so that was tricky in a lot of different ways and had to be very culturally sensitive. The Japanese and the French are extremely different cultures. Well, Americans are too, of course. But yeah, I was oftentimes put in the middle of those situations. And God's kind of made me the kind of person that can see a lot of sides on things. And I can tell people, wait a minute now, that person didn't say that, they said this. Now, what did you mean by that? And what did you hear by that? And so there was a number of times where I was kind of in the middle of some arguments and helping to smooth things out. They really called me a peacemaker. At the time, this is really going to date me, but those of you who are older remember James Baker was doing some peace making in the Middle East, which he was the Secretary of State, I believe, at that time. And so it's kind of funny. They started calling me the James Baker of project management. So I guess a little bit of a claim to fame there at that company. So I was able to get through a lot of could have been tense things just by helping people listen to each other. And that project was very good. Came in above, ahead of schedule and below budget. So those kind of things worked very well. When I came back from France, the Monsanto owned NutraSweet at the time, and they were pretty much shutting down everything and turning NutraSweet into a commodity business rather than a specialty chemical business. And because that's kind of what Monsanto knows how to do. And so, again, got caught up in some layoffs as they fired pretty much the entire engineering group, from NutraSweet, just kind of rolled everything into their standard engineering, which is kind of a shame because NutraSweet at that time was making money absolutely hand over fist. I'm not going to go over any numbers because they might still be proprietary. I don't know, but gobs of profit. Let's just leave it that way. So anyway, from there, I went on to a smaller chemical company here in Peoria, Illinois, which is where I live now. It's a Swiss company, and I worked there for about 6 years or so, and that went well. Had some successes there. But then, because I live in Peoria, and this is headquarters to Caterpillar. Now, it isn't anymore. A couple of years ago, they moved headquarters out, but for many years, this is where Caterpillar was headquartered. I thought, I live right here. I probably should at least check into it. And I had a number of friends at church that worked for Cat. We have kind of a larger church and a number of Caterpillar employees there. So as I got to know them, talking to them about the company, whatever, I decided I really ought to check out Caterpillar. And that was over 20 years ago. And some mentors there at church helped me get my foot in the door at Cat and stayed there for almost 20 years. Learning, as you kind of look at my career progression, foods, chemicals, and then bulldozers. Perfectly logical progression there, right? But that worked out very well too. That was a good career move for me, and staying there almost 20 years was rewarding. It's a good, solid Midwest work ethic kind of company. High value on morals, that kind of thing. So it fit me very well, and I fit the company fairly well. So that was good. As you mentioned, that career came to an end at the very beginning of COVID. Caterpillar laid off about 4,000 of us to try to make the quarter end numbers meet when they thought that COVID was going to collapse their business. It turns out that it didn't, but that's another story. Does that make Caterpillar a bad company or anything? No, it's just that's the way it is. And so, I really don't hold any grudges. I probably did there at that first week anyway, after getting gobsmacked, after that kind of thing. But anyway, so I went looking for another job in the depths of COVID. Not a good idea. Not too successful. But a friend of mine introduced me to a very interesting technology. He said, why don't we start a business together? He was a Cat employee in the past, and, we'd gotten along well. And so we talked about doing that. And after, we did some things with that a little bit, it was pretty clear to both of us that, we're probably not great business partners. But, so I took this product that's made in Florida. And you know what? Let me spin around and grab a prop here. Because this is what I'm doing now, and this is kind of where we kind of have come from all those conversations. And if this looks just like a copper tube filled with stuff, it's because that's exactly what it is. All the years with the chemical engineering background and the years at Caterpillar, working mostly in diesel engines and around the engines, I got to know that stuff pretty well. And this product, when you put diesel fuel into one end of it, there's a whole bunch of rare earth catalysts and stuff in here. And that takes the longer chain molecules of diesel fuel. And because it does a catalytic reaction in here, basically cracking them into shorter ones. So you've got some shorter molecules coming out the other end. Not all of them, but enough to make a difference. And shorter molecules, as you probably remember in your high school days of chemistry, will burn. Yeah, if you clear the cobwebs out, shorter molecules are going to burn more efficiently than longer molecules. And that's really the chemistry and the physics behind this invention. And so bottom line, it gives you about 5 to 7% better fuel economy in diesel drinking equipment, locomotives, on-road trucks, port equipment, diesel generators, electrical generators. And ships, anything that burns diesel, or long chain fuels like ships, is going to help, and you're going to get like this 5 to 7% fuel increase, or fuel economy. Save money. Let me get my words straight here. Yeah, you're going to burn less fuel to get the same results and save some money. So that's kind of where I am today, and been running this business for 5 years, I guess, something like that. Had all the hard knocks of trying to convert from a corporate employee all my career, corporate dude, to an entrepreneur, and that was a bit jarring and not easy. We could talk a lot about some hard-earned lessons and hard knocks and things like that. But I really wouldn't want to change anything.
Now, just one
I've
follow-up
learned,
to that, because certainly
yeah.
an interesting story. Now, you mentioned a friend introduced you, and then you guys, it sound like, kind of started to go down. Never, or not trying to by any means pour salt to a wound if it wasn't a amicable exit or it
Oh,
wasn't that. But I was just kind of curious because he started out kind of getting introduced by a friend, and it sounds like you kind of picked up the ball and ran. So was it one where, hey, you guys said we just are we're great friends, but we're not good business partners, or this isn't one that the other friend wanted to do, or you found out you wanted to do it yourself, or it was just wasn't converging, or kind of what was the genesis? Because I think that happens to a lot of people, which is you get started with a
mm,
friend, and there's a number of reasons why it may not be a good situation to work
yeah.
further with that co-founder. So just was kind of curious how that played out and kind of where that friend ended up.
Yeah, I don't think there's any open flesh wounds there or anything. Um, but he was in a position in his life where he really needed a full-time job. And as he found one and somebody had approached him, that kind of took him out of the picture and meant that he was doing 50 to 60 hours a week, at his job, meaning he couldn't really put any time into the business. So I want to be as charitable as I can towards him, but he really kind of didn't have any options at that point in his life, whereas I kind of did. Um, and so also I was very interested in this technology, and he was not. He kind of wanted to take, his business a different direction, and I was helping him with that as well. But this was the one that really felt like it fit my background, extremely well. So when we parted, I took this piece of the business, and he took all the rest. And unfortunately, because of him not being able to, spend much time on it, it never went too far, for him. But as far as I know, I run into him on LinkedIn once in a while, and I think he's doing well, and I wish him well.
Gotcha. No, it makes sense. And
Yeah,
hey, by all, certainly, there are hard times in life where, as much as you might want to be an entrepreneur, you might want to go down this route. You also have to pay the bills, have to take care of a family, and different positions, different stages in life lead to different opportunities. So definitely makes sense. So it sounds like you're
yeah,
able to be in a position where you picked up the ball, you ran with that, and you continued the business. So now, as you kind of walked us through and mentioned, continuing to do the business today. So maybe walk us through, if you're to now say, okay, arrived at where you're at today, been doing this for a number of years, looking out over the next kind of 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things headed, or what's the next step in store?
yeah. Well, when you're in a situation, like me as an entrepreneur, I'm at, when people ask me, are you retired? I say, well, yes and no. I mean, I'm retired from Caterpillar, but really not ready mentally or financially to just completely just quit everything. So I'm semi-retired. That's what I tell people. Um, so in the position I'm in, doing this it is fun for me. I enjoy the work. I enjoy working with people again. I'm enjoying working with, kind of learning to be a sales guy, sort of. Although I've never been a decent sales guy. I tease people. I say I'm a lousy sales guy, but I'm a pretty decent engineer. So if you need problem solved, let's talk. If you want some guy to sell you a used car, I'm probably not your dude. But if you got a problem to be solved, yeah, let's talk about that one. There I can help you. And for any diesel drinking industries, this is the technology that I use to help you save 5 to 7%. And by the way, I keep throwing that number out, 5 to 7%. If that's interesting to you, I do have a website called decarbonize5.com that I've got some calculators built into, and you can hop over there, decarbonize5.com, and just see, type in your information in the calculator, and it's going to tell you how much money you can save, but then also how many tons of CO2 you can reduce from your fleet. And that's kind of a good step to see if this is even worth, pursuing, for you. So that's kind of step one. But kind of lost my train of thought here. Where I was going was for the
Yeah, and
next
this was
six to
kind of
12
or
months, you
catching up
said.
because you semi-retired, kind of going through that. You
Yeah.
mentioned, people were interested, and then kind of looking out over the next 6 to 12 months as to where things are headed, and you started to touch on that.
Yeah, I'm going to do quite a bit of the same. I'm going to be doing a lot more of it, though. I generally rely on like a cold email outreach, because there's a whole lot of people out there that need to know about this. And because, uh, people ask me what my biggest competition is, and it's just lack of awareness, really. Nobody knows that this kind of technology exists. Um, I'll use semi trucks, for example. We've all driven on the roads, and we see trucks that have these skirts along the bottom, these aerodynamic skirts. Um, and a lot of trucks on the back have these fold out contraptions that help increase the aerodynamics of a big box that you're hauling down the road. So people know those kinds of things exists, but they don't know that you can do something under the hood with something that's very simple like this. Just put it in your diesel fuel line and actually make your fuel burn cleaner and better. Um, and so what I have to do is a lot of public awareness, if you will, because I'm not just like one guy selling one trailer skirt versus another guy selling another kind of trailer skirt. I'm dealing with something that, frankly, most of the world does not know exists. And so that's my big challenge, is to get people to at least say, hey, is this an option we didn't know about? Maybe we should talk to this guy or look at his website or something. Um, but then also an extreme amount of skepticism. As you can imagine, if you've been around the industry for a while, you know that I'm not the first joker to come along and saying, "Hey, I've got this magic black box that does wonderful things." Um, and I don't want to be in that category, and that's why I always take 30 seconds to explain, like I did, about how this works with the chemistry and the rare earth catalyst, long chains to short chains, so people kind of get an idea of the chemistry, at least can kind of remember from their high school days, high school chemistry. So I spend a lot of my time doing that, and for that reason. It's not a black box. It's not magic. It's perfectly explainable. This kind of chemistry happens in oil refineries, chemical plants all over the world every day. It's just called cracking and dehydrogenation. Um, for that's your chemistry terms for it. But it's not new. It's not magic. Uh, it's very established. And so I want to kind of get that out of the way with everybody, so people understand this. I'm not just this, they've had a lot of jokers come through in the past with stuff that's can't be explained, and maybe it doesn't work either, which unfortunately that's the problem. And so I get lumped in with those guys a lot. So that's why I take that time to kind of say, no, this is different. This is just straight chemistry and physics. No magic here, no black box. Easy to understand.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense, and sounds like there are plenty of runway yet or continue to build and grow things. So hopefully it continues to be an ongoing success for you. Well, now as we've kind of reached the present day of the journey, and even a look a little bit as to where things are headed, great time to transition to the couple questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What did you learn from it?
Wow. When I first got into this business, I had somebody, contact me, um, and say that they could line up a whole bunch of contacts for me. They could do the calls for me, and they could get all these appointments set up for me of people who were genuinely interested. And that cost me about 45 grand for the first year worth of that service. And boy, was that a complete loser. Um, I should have waited a year or two and tried to bang it out myself the hard way, so I could really know what my business was about, what people, my prospects were going to be like and such. So I jumped ahead. I had some money, so let's invest it, right, in the business. Well, I really got zero out of that, and so taking 45 grand out of your startup capital and basically wasting it the first year was certainly a poor way to start a business. And, I don't mind sharing that story. Um, I've I've been raised and I still enjoy being very open about good and bad and ugly about myself, and about others. Let's be honest. None of us are perfect here. None of us look as good as our social media uh, makes us look like. So let's be honest here. We all make mistakes. We all do some dumb things, and that was certainly one that hurt me. I got nothing out of that, and it was just extremely frustrating. They tried to do a good job, I think. Well, no, they really didn't. No, their people were rewarded for booking meetings, whether the person was interested or not. They recorded all these things, and they would do things. I'd hear this gal pressuring this person to take a meeting. Well, can you send me some info? I don't really want to talk to anybody until I understand a little bit about what it's about. Great. I've just signed you up for next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Like, I'd listen to these things and I'd have to actually call that person back and apologize for the rudeness of this person that I hired, to do this job. So it was a very bad experience for me. And I've had a number of people since then, now that I'm a little older, a little wiser, a few more gray hairs, approach me about similar things. I'm like, I'm still pretty scarred from the last, the last company that tried to pitch that to me. So I'm doing things differently now.
Yeah, and I think that's an easy area. I mean, you want to get sales and marketing, you want to get the cash flow, you want to get the demand and see how people are receiving it. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can find some great services and great businesses that can deliver on that. And other times there's plenty of people that make a lot of promises and don't always operate on the best practices or always deliver. So definitely
Yeah.
an easy area to make a mistake, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
I used to subscribe to a newsletter on business. It was actually a lot of years ago, even before I was ever even considering being an entrepreneur at all. But one of the things this guy used to always preach about was being a chicken entrepreneur. Start small. Um, don't bet the farm on it. If you can start something on a part-time basis, I kind of did that. I mean, I had some retirement funds and I had some things where I wasn't destitute. I already had some savings built up. I was getting ready for retirement. Wasn't quite ready, but I was getting there. So I had some working capital to work with and everything. So, I unfortunately I bet $45,000 as I just mentioned to you, but again, if I was to do it over again, I wouldn't do that. But anyway, this guy always talked about being a chicken entrepreneur. Go in slow, go in part-time if you can, do however you can to figure out what the audience reception is going to be like. And so I would really recommend somebody going in slow. I have a number of people have contacted me, basically old friends. I mean, I had a huge network back at Caterpillar. Dealers, customers even have called me and said, "Hey, it looks like you're doing something new. I need something to do here. I need a job. Could we work together?" And I'm always very open and honest with them, saying, I really don't want to be responsible for your family's finances, if this does not go well, because again, the market is fairly skeptical, and it's going to take a long time to get into something. Once a customer really understands what it does, you're going to do well, but it's going to take a while. And so please don't bet your family's finances on this business. So I practice what I preach there. When someone wants to come on board and help me, and do this work with me, and get commissions on it, which has worked out very well for some people. I just warn them, let's go at this at a slow pace. Let's go at it as a chicken entrepreneur.
Yeah, no,
And so
I
I would
think
really
you kind of
recommend anybody kind of really take their time to figure things out. Even a product like this that should be a no-brainer, because you can save 5 to 7% fuel with this, And actually, over-the-road trucking is probably our worst payback, and it's about a year. Actually, with today's diesel prices, it's going to be less than a year. And that's fabulous. I mean, how many 100% return projects are sitting on your CFO's desk for waiting for signature? Probably not many. And that's our worst case. You go into mining, locomotive, and it just only gets better from there. We've seen, I've seen paybacks as high as about 1,000%, meaning you're going to pay back 10 times every year your investment. Most for mining, it's more like 300-400% generally. For gravel pit operations, we have a couple customers in that, and they're doing, 3, 4, 5 month kind of paybacks, which means 200 to 300%, sometimes 400%. So, I mean, it seems like it's a no-brainer.
But I
And
think
any
to your
product that you might be super excited about, you might think, oh, this is a no-brainer, everybody's going to love it. Well, maybe not.
Yeah,
So
and
be
I
careful.
think to your point, I think that, as much as it may be great opportunities or great prospects, setting up those realistic expectations and also kind of giving the honest alignment of expectations can be a great rule of thumb and helpful or especially earlier on in the process. So I think that's a great rule of thumb. Well, now as we do wrap up and as wrap towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, I'll tell you the best shortcut, especially for thinking about, hey, my operations maybe could use a little slimming on the diesel side, especially now with diesel prices the way they are at the point of this recording. It's awful. But decarbonize5.com, it gets you into me, and it gets you into those calculators where you can kind of do your first step, punch in a few of your own numbers and see if this is worth it. And if it is, just drop down to the bottom and schedule a meeting with me and
Awesome.
let's talk. I want people
Well,
to know I'm not a real salesy guy. I'm an engineer. If you got a problem, I'm going to be jumping on that and go, ooh, how can you solve this? Because that's just the kind of guy I am. It's just what engineers do.
Awesome. No, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So,
There
with
you
that,
go.
thank
Yeah.
you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So, just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. Along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else along your journey, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Brian, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next
Pleasure.
leg of
Thank
your
you.
journey. Absolutely. Wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, sir. And thanks.
The road ain't straight, it's got a bend. Dreams of seeds we plant, my friend. Dusty boots, but a heart of gold. Your story's waiting to be told. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small be shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Cowbell ring and feel the beat. Hustle hard, don't take a seat. Every step you're blazing trail. Inventive journey never fails.